Hi there. So I've been wanting to do a video for a few days which explains a little bit about why I do the work that I do and why I'm so passionate about helping people with the challenges that I like to help people with. And the best way to kind of illustrate any kind of ideas or concepts or to get a message across really is to tell a story. And I've been thinking about this for quite some days, because if I were to kind of tell you the entire backstory of why I do the things that I do, we'd be here for a very, very long time, because it's part of the journey for me has been very eventful, very colourful, sometimes really awful, sometimes really great. And I just wanted really kind of a little nugget of something that really kind of puts together in quite a succinct way why it is that I do the work that I do. And it kind of, as these things do, things sort of suddenly arise and you sort of think, yeah, that's it, that's the right thing to do. And it happened today when I was having my daily chat with my best friend. And throughout lockdown, I've had two friends where we have literally spoken to each other, or at least messaged each other every single day, to both support each other with things, to kind of ease boredom sometimes, to help each other when things have been a bit emotionally challenging, and also to hold each other accountable to the things that we want to do, because during times like this the time can just go and go and go, and it's really important for us to have something that gives us motivation and momentum, and that's really related to this story as well. So we have been chatting quite a lot over the years. Carol and I, we literally can talk for hours and hours, putting the world to rights and coming up with great ideas about what we would do in the world if we had this position, or if we were able to influence things in a certain way, and how we think it's going to be useful to help people in different ways. And it's really kind of generated a lot of the ideas that appear in my work from time to time. And particularly over the last few months, she's been saying to me, oh, for goodness sake, Emma, you've got to write this stuff down. You've got to blog about it. You've got to do videos or something. All these things that you talk to me about, you really have to do something with that material. And so I thought, right, okay, well, I'm going to start. And today was one of those stories. And I was recalling, and I can't 100% remember how we got around to this story, but I was recalling a situation when I was really very, very poorly a number of years ago. And actually, this story dates back to around about March of 2009. So it was just over 11 years ago. And I had been very, very unwell, and I had been catatonic for about 9 or 10 days. So I had been completely unable to talk. I hadn't moved, and I was having kind of people coming to do home visits, the crisis team. And eventually they decided that it was probably best if I went into hospital. So on this particular day, I found myself in the consultant psychiatrist's office with my ex-husband Martin, and he and I are still very good friends. And most of what happened in that office has been relayed to me by Martin, because there is, out of the hours that we were sat in that room, there's only a very, very tiny snippet of it that I actually recall for myself. But to give you some kind of idea of where things were, he would ask me my name, and I would sort of blankly stare back and then look at Martin, and he would answer the question. And this particular one really, really stuck with me. He said, "So I hear you're studying. What are you studying?" And I just sat there with a blank look on my face. I can remember almost feeling a bit panicky because I had no recollection, but I didn't really even care either. I was just at the end, at my wit's end, and there was nothing there. And I often say to people, that period of my life was a bit like I was encased in a kind of glass box with no kind of connection to the outside world, and I was watching everything going on around me, and nobody could kind of communicate in, and I couldn't communicate out, and it was like I was sort of imprisoned in this, like an old telephone box, made out of glass or whatever. So I could see everything that was going on, but I couldn't really take it in, and I couldn't participate. And that had kind of culminated in me ending up in this psychiatric hospital. And so the question was, I hear you're studying, what's that in? And I eventually looked over to my ex-husband, and he said, well, she's doing he was trying to sort of G me on, well, she's doing a master's at Leeds University in gender and difference in the histories of art. And he went, and this is the bit that I really recall, so he said, right, he looked over at me and he said, okay, well, you're never going to be able to study again, and you're never going to be able to work again. And that kind of really hit me. From the outside, you probably wouldn't have noticed much different because I was just, vacant. I couldn't, interact. But inside, and I'm going to say a swear word now, so prepare yourself. Inside, I can recall very clearly looking back at him and thinking, fuck you. Because I knew that I had the ability somehow to sort this out. And I knew that I wasn't going to be told by somebody who didn't know me, who had never met me before, had no idea what I was like, that I was never going to be able to work or study again. Basically, he had whipped away any hope, any possibility for the future, any notion that I could fulfill my potential. And, I don't know to this day, excuse me, I don't know what that power was within me that gave me such a clear, strong notion of, I don't care what you say, I don't care what you do, but what you have said is a lie, okay? And at that point, of course, I literally had no idea how that was all going to pan out, there was no plan that came to me. I just knew in my head, fuck you. There's no way I'm going to be like this forever. But as I say, it didn't go further than that at that point. And I spent the next month in that unit, and then aftercare for about another 2 months after that. And in actual fact, I didn't really get significantly better until a year later, when I decided to stop drinking alcohol. And I had reached even darker places in that intervening year in the meantime. And when it came to the point that in March 2010, where I put down the alcohol and I chose to put my life back together, that's where things really, really started to change for me. And then the sort of punchline of the story really is, a few years later, so it must have been only 4 years after that incident in 2009 and 3 years after I got into recovery, I was working as a general manager of a mental health charity. And by that point, I had also, not only had I come off alcohol, but I had also come off huge doses of psychiatric medications. And it had taken me 2 years to come off all of the medication. Now, bearing in mind that whilst I was on the medication, I had gained, 6 or 7 stones, and I was at my heaviest, I was over 15 stone, and I stopped weighing myself at that point. And the weight didn't really, although I had, when I got into recovery from alcoholism, I had dropped some weight, the weight didn't really start coming off until after I'd taken the final dose. Now, I'm not going to go into details about the withdrawal syndrome that I experienced, because that's for another story elsewhere, and it's an important thing that I will be picking up on in these little videos, but that's not what I'm here for now. What actually happened was that whilst I was in this particular role, I had decided to kind of stop looking after myself. The weight was dropping off. I ended up being kind of a size 6 or a size 8, comfortably at that time. I probably had dropped a little bit more. Now, I hadn't dieted, I'd done nothing. It was simply through coming off these drugs, the weight dropped off. And in the process of that, I started dressing really nicely. I got myself some lovely clothes. I normally wore a dress. I started wearing my high heels again. I do my hair, I do my makeup. And when I would share my story, people simply could not believe that I was the person who I described myself to be only, 3 or 4 years before. And it just so happened that I decided to take part in a research project as a participant. And in order to take part, I had to go to this centre, and I had to give blood, a lot of blood. I mean, big tubes of blood, like this, and sort of this big, 6 or 8 of them. And I walked into the centre to sign in, and as I turned round, I saw a man walk into the centre, and I thought, good grief, it's that doctor, it's that psychiatrist. And he saw me, and he looked, and he said, oh, hello. And I said, oh, hello, back to him, and he said, have we met? And I said, yes, we have met. And I can't really describe how I felt at that moment, but there was definitely a mixture of, I'm going to show you, yeah, you were wrong, and kind of almost pride. I felt really, wow, there was almost a childish sense of, I want to show him what I've done. It was almost like a mixture of that and also a deep, anger. Actually, there was quite a bit of anger there. And he went off and he went into his room, and then lo and behold, what happened? He comes out and says my name, and of course, then we ended up being in a room together for about an hour and a half whilst he took blood, and then asked me a whole string of questions about my life, my past, my present, my job, my family, my recovery, and my future. And so I really took great delight in telling him what I had achieved since he spoke those words, and also the fact that, having been told I would have to take, thousands of milligrams of frankly toxic medications for the rest of my life, I was very, very pleased to tell him that I was taking no medication, and it took me several tries to get him to believe that I was taking no medication at all. And so that was, the point at which I was really started to kind of gain a sense of, okay, I have actually achieved something here. And according to him and many others like him in that profession, I had achieved something that was theoretically impossible. And so basically, from that moment on, I was already working in a role that enabled me to support other people who were experiencing challenges. But it was from that moment forward that I thought, actually, there really is a message here. And it wasn't really until I started my own business and became self-employed that I realised that I had a potential to do something very different to what was being done in mainstream conventional services. And I'm going to link this a little bit to what's actually going on now. And if you're watching this, in 2021 or later, then it will date us to the middle of 2020, whilst we are tentatively coming out of lockdown in the UK. And it's, a number of things have kind of been, I've been musing on a number of things whilst we've been going through this situation. And because I work in a trauma-informed way and also a socially informed way, that's to say that we know now that all forms of mental ill health are caused by some form of trauma or stress, and or social situations, life events, difficult relationships, financial problems, all of those types of things. We now know that the chemical imbalance story is not true. There's not a shred of evidence to support a chemical imbalance concept of mental ill health, which many of you probably won't know. And if you doubt it, I'm happy to send you a great long list of research articles to back it up. Same with biological. We know there's nothing wrong with the brain, and we also know there is no genetic cause of mental ill health. Okay, and so whilst I have been very aware over the last, there's a lot of scientific evidence to back up the trauma-informed position, and that means when we see somebody who is struggling with mental health challenges, we know that there will either be some trauma in the past, some form of stress, or, as I say, these social challenges. And so whilst we're in the midst of the virus situation, particularly during lockdown, I'm very conscious, even within myself, that there are challenges to be dealt with simply from being in the situation that we're in. And for some people, it will be deeply traumatizing. At the same time, we are experiencing a situation where lots and lots of people are going to potentially be out of work, potentially lose their businesses. People have had to cancel weddings, they've had to cancel holidays. People have had their hopes and their dreams and their goals thwarted. And the goals bit's really, really important, because there is a ton of research, and I've done research around this myself, to basically show that human beings are goal-orientated beings. We basically live by goals, in whatever form it is. We wake up in the morning, we have a goal to go and brush our teeth. We have a goal to get in the shower. There's always some kind of plan that goes on, even if we're not consciously aware of it, but we are goal-orientated people. And at the same time, we also have to have bigger goals, bigger missions that basically give us a reason to get up every day and keep going. That's what we need. Sometimes we call this a purpose. And that's why we have come up with the purposeful health model, because that brings in how important it is for humans to feel purposeful, to feel that they have a reason to be here and a reason to keep going. And one of the things that I think we're starting to see from this situation is that people who are starting to get quite low and quite anxious will be largely find, and you might want to think about this in your own situation, excuse me, you may well think about that and think, actually there have been, if you just think for a few minutes, and I heard another chap online talking about this incidentally the other day, if you think about all of the things, all of the plans you've had that should have happened over the last 3 months, you will see that some of your hopes, they've either had to be delayed or completely stopped. You will have had some goals that you haven't been able to achieve. You may start to think, oh gosh, my dreams, my life vision, where is it going? What am I doing? And when we start to feel like that, we can head towards hopelessness and even helplessness. And it's really not a good place for a human being to be. And so I feel that this calls for us to, those of us who are able to reach out to our friends, reach out to our families, reach out to our neighbours and our colleagues or our clients or communities, and help to help others to hold on to some kind of sense of purpose. Now, conversely, there have also been other people, and actually I was talking to my dad about this today. There have also been lots of people who have been very active in their communities, and they've started volunteering either locally or doing shopping for some people in their local area or their neighbourhood. They've taken on certain roles, or they've joined a charity to help them, or I know the local council has taken on lots and lots of volunteers during this time and is distributing them out to the places that they fund. And so a lot of people have found that the sense of purpose that it has given them has been so amazing to their sense of well-being and their overall sense of joy and purpose in life, that I think the figure is something like 60% of them have said that they're going to continue doing that even after lockdown has finished. So, whichever way you're looking at it, there are some real pros of the situation and some real cons. And it all depends which side of the coin, I guess, we have fallen on. Now, are we somebody like myself, actually, who the minute I knew that something, I could sort of see the direction this was going in, I dived in and I set up something in my village, in my local community, and it was fabulous. It kept me going for ages, and it has kept a whole load of people going, and there is not one person in the village who hasn't received a leaflet that we all delivered. We all printed copies and we delivered them to all our neighbours, and I think they've been delivered twice now if you include in the village magazine, and are delivering things, posting things online. Every single person in this village of every age group has been reached, and that really is quite something. And now, although the Facebook group is not as active as it was, that's mainly because we have all kind of taken on one or two regular duties for particularly the elderly, and doing shopping and driving and things like that for people, and prescriptions and stuff for those who can't leave their homes. And it's really meant for me that certainly in the first few weeks of lockdown, I actually felt really uplifted, and and it sort of cushioned me from that blow of the shock, I think. And that's what we're really looking at. We're looking at resilience and how can we bounce back quickly from our challenges. And so I think it's kind of led me into thinking, okay, the long-term sort of emotional effects of this will probably start to show itself quite soon for people, for those who are going to struggle with it, where particularly if people are at risk of losing their businesses going forwards and things like that, or have been poorly themselves. And for me, it's really important, particularly, in the work that I do and the way that I do it, to keep getting out that message to people that it's okay. We can find a way through. We can do this together. We can show you how to do things or think things or plan for making the situation that you're in right now as good as it can possibly be at this time, and also to perhaps start thinking about, okay, well, maybe I can't do that plan that I had specifically in the way that I had it, but maybe I can rejig it somehow and make it different or even better. And I know lots of people now who, as a result of the situations that we've been in all around the planet, have made even bigger goals and visions for themselves. It's almost like the same as what I thought in that office 11 years ago when I said, you, I don't care what you say, there is no way that I'm going to have my life halted at the age of, I was then 32. I'm not going to have my life halted because you have told me that I can't do it. And as I say, there was some power, a power greater than myself within me that eventually, as I say, it didn't happen right away. It was over another year before I really got on my feet and made those massive, massive changes. But the seed was sown for me. And, we can all help each other to build resilience, and we can all help each other to plan and have visions for the future. So I think I'm going to leave it there for this one, but I hope it gives you some kind of an idea of why it is I do the things that I do, and why it is that I do the work that I do, and why it's so important to me to do so, because I know that if there's only one person that I can help to move forwards and encourage when they are feeling helpless and hopeless, then that makes me very, very happy. And during this period of time, actually, in fact, I am one of those people who has kind of gone, you know what, this isn't going to stop me. I think the world needs something bigger than I had imagined for myself originally, and that's what I'm going to be working on. And you just try and stop me. It's not going to happen, COVID. It's not going to happen. And I will do everything that I can to carry out those plans and those goals that I want to do to help other people. And hopefully we can all inspire each other in a little way, and we'll come through this, and possibly we'll come through it and find ourselves in a better, kinder, more generous and compassionate, inspiring world. And I really, really believe that can be achieved.